to get up out of harm's way. Who am I talking to today? Don't you know you got to understand that regardless of what you go through in this life, that if surely is a word of excitement. David said surely goodness and mercy. You got to understand those twins, goodness and mercy, will follow you all the days of your life. You got to learn how to forgive yourself, fathers, and rise up to the true stature of fatherhood. You got to be the living example of fallen creatures that got back up. The only fallen creature that can't get back up is the devil, who fell from heaven. But you got to understand, you got to come out of the darkness into the marvelous light and look for a change in you. And then lastly, you got to understand, God has prepared for fathers a dwelling place. David said, I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Well, I tell you, you don't have to wait till we get to the sweet on by and by. It's time for we calling all fathers. Calling all fathers out of the darkness into the marvelous light, that we might be able to participate in the true love of God. The true love of God is family. The true love of God is hope. The true love of God is peace. The true love of God is a connection that allows us to understand I'm better than I was yesterday. Anybody here that can say to yourself when you look in the mirror, I'm better today than I was yesterday? You ought to say I'm better. If you laid down your old stuff and you picked up your new stuff, you ought to look in the mirror when your conscience tries to remind you of your past and say, I'm better today than I was yesterday. And if you're better, you don't have to tell nobody after you talk to yourself. Somebody will tell you. You ever had somebody look at you? They remembered you from your past and they couldn't quite tell it was you because of the anointing that was on you now. Because why? You look like God now. You exemplify God now in the spirit and the righteousness, the way you walk. You might have a physical frame, but it's such a spirit in you, they don't even want to ask where your has been like. Who am I talking to? You ever had somebody that remember you for your past, but when they run up on you in your destiny, in your future, they really don't want to ask that. Why? Because there's a change in you. I'll leave you with this story. All of us have been in a place where there's some things we have not been proud of as fathers. Some places where our wives and our children have looked upon us and knew we were not at our best. And when you're not at your best, everybody knows it. You ever been sick and somebody told you before you told them, you look sick? Just this weekend, I went to see one of my friends by the name of Eddie Goddess. My daughter told me just the other day that my son had called and he has cancer. And I didn't qualify if he had it or not by making a phone call to Columbus. I just got in my car and went there. I didn't call anybody to find out how bad it was. It was worth my coming. I just went there. And when I got there, I pulled up in front of his old house. I thought it was still the house he lived in, but somehow when I was sitting in the driveway, his spirit was not on that house anymore. You know, a house does have a spirit. Your physical house where you live at that residence, and this house has a spirit on it. And as I sat in the driveway, and I never called him to tell him I was coming. And I sat in the driveway, I dialed the old number to let him know I was outside, and the number was disconnected. And I went and knocked on the door, and a stranger came to the door and said, the Eddie guys you're looking for don't live here anymore. So what I did was I figured now I'm going to have to call him to find out where he is. So I thought I'd call his office. He's an insurance man for 35 years. And I called his office, and the office said, well, we'll have to get back with you because they just don't divulge any information about where people live and phone numbers and all that. And all of a sudden the phone hung up. Well, because I had his personal cell phone, I decided, well, now is my time to call. And you know, he answered. And when he answered, I went all the way to Columbus, drove all that mileage, and when he answered, he was 6 minutes from me. Can I get a witness? You see, when you seek, you shall find. When you ask, it shall be given. When he heard my voice, he just paused and began to cry on the phone. And he said to me, he said, I don't know why you're here, but I'm glad you're here because I'm in trouble. Anybody ever been in trouble and a familiar voice called your name? Can I get a witness? And I said to him, that's why I'm here. I found out. And he began to cry on the phone. And he said, well, I'm 6 minutes from you. Just come out and make a right and drive down the street. You'll see me in the gray car and I'll signal you. And you just follow me. Well, I went down the street, and as I began to follow Eddie, as we began to go from his old neighborhood, don't you know, things got a little bit brighter. Oh, you don't hear me. Oh, I'm going somewhere. As we began to go from the old neighborhood where his spirit had left the house where he once lived, and things had got a little brighter. Don't you know, whenever you decide to leave your old situation, your old circumstance, the old man in you, things get a little bit brighter. Well, as we got to where he now lives, he got a beautiful little mansion. I'm talking about a beautiful little mansion, amen. And as we pulled up in the driveway, and he hit the button on one of the 3-car garage, and it went up, and we came in, and we began to embrace and hug one another. He took me into the new house where his spirit had resided on that house. And we began to cry, and we began to talk about the things and the way we used to be. And then he pulled up his shirt. He said, I want you to see this. I've had an operation. But the operation didn't kill me. Oh, can I get a witness? He said they had to. See, sometimes God has surgery for you, but the surgery don't kill you. Sometimes the surgery that we have, sometimes God lets our whole family disappear from us. Am I right about that? That's some kind of surgery. Sometimes we got to lose the job. Can I get a witness? And that's some kind of surgery. Sometimes we got to lose the automobile. We'll even lose the house. And that's like a surgery. Why? Because something has been taken from us. Can I get a witness? But you know, when Eddie showed me that, he said they had to sew me back up, because there wasn't nothing they could do, and I'm on chemo now. But you know what? I'm all right. And I looked at him, and I looked at his face, and I looked at his hands, and I looked at his body, and I realized he had drove his own car, and I realized he was driving himself back and forth to the doctor to get chemo, and he was driving himself back to the doctor to get radiation. Now, I don't know nobody that's been that sick that you can drive yourself back to the doctor to get chemo and radiation treatment, and you're still on the phone taking care of your business. Like, had he not looked at this shirt, I wouldn't have known nothing was wrong. I tell you, when God is on you, when God's Spirit is in you, when the anointing, the power of God is all around you, can't nobody tell you sick. Sometimes, man, you got to go through life with just a condition, but you got to keep going. Sometimes you got to go through life and pick yourself up and turn yourself around and plant your own feet on solid ground and realize I'm a man of God. And when you are a man of God, you got to come out of darkness, come out of dark way of thinking that I can't make it. Yes, you can. Come out of dark way of thinking I've lost my family. Well, I'm going to get them back. Come out of dark ways of thinking I'm a man for God. Why? Because I'm made in God's image. And if you're made in the image of God, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Get up, men, and claim your heritage. Get up, men, and remove your sunglasses. Get up, men, and remove the tent that's in your eye. And realize God made you wonderfully and marvelously made that you might be able to do all things through him when he strengthens you.
That's right.
That's right.
Hallelujah. 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 Coming out of the darkness into the marvelous light. Sometimes maimed, sometimes wounded, sometimes hurt, sometimes in trials and tribulations, but my theme song is I'm coming out. I used to sing a song at the old church. I'm coming up on the rock side of the mountain, but I'm coming up. And I'm going if I got to go all by myself. Why? Because I got to reclaim some stuff.
That's right.
I got to reclaim some children. I got to reclaim my family. I got to reclaim my life. And I got to reclaim my dignity. Why? Because God made me in his image. Why? Because I'm a vessel of God. Why? Because I'm a father. Why? Because it's my turn. Why? Because God called me for this moment, for this day, to rise up from my situation and circumstance and be all I can be in him. Let's give God some praise. Let's give God some praise. Let's give God some praise. Oh, let's give God some praise. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.